This is We Bleed Orange and Black, the podcast for Halloween and horror lovers. Join us as we interview creators, discuss our favorite horror, and share original spooky stories. I'm Jeff C. Carter, and this week we're talking with Michael Jess Alexander about his new collection, Shadows and Whispers. Returning champion Michael Jess Alexander teaches high school English in Wyoming. His work can be found in J.J. Otre Review, Bewildering Stories, Flash Fiction Magazine, Serial Magazine, and Dark Fire Fiction, among others. Indies Today declared his debut collection, Boarded Windows, Dead Leaves, to be the best independent horror book of 2020. His follow-up, Conjure Darkness, 6 Macabre Tales, won the same award for 2022. He enjoys all things spooky, a passion his wife tolerates and his daughters encourage. Welcome back to the show, Michael.
Thanks for having me.
I have an icebreaker question for you. We're coming in hot. English teachers versus Chat GPT. Who's winning?
Oh boy, gosh. I've expended so much stress over AI. It's kind of hard to say, but in my class, I think the English teacher is staying on top of it.
Nice. Any tips or tricks that you want to share?
I'm pretty old school. I red pen my students' essays to death, and just that familiarity with their writing really makes it pretty easy to spot the fakery.
Gotcha. All right, let's dive right in. The collection kicks off with A Forest Haunt, which once again has you bringing us into the woods, into a cabin. It seems like you can't get away from these grim cabins.
It's set during the 60s, and this is a gentleman. He's not a huge fan of humanity, has retreated into the forest for a life of solitude, clearly suffers from some extreme social anxiety, and has made a new life away from society. And to his great chagrin, he discovers one fateful day that he has a neighbor. And there's more to this neighbor than meets the eye.
And this is your homage to the Grinch?
Yeah, I guess so. I suppose so.
You got that Grinch in him.
Yes, except he does not find that love for humanity by the end of the story.
There is a ring of trees in the story that our main character enters in order to learn more about these mysterious ruins. And he finds a book, at which point it gets epistolary. When you think about it, a book is a bunch of dead trees. So it's sort of rings of trees within trees that this guy gets trapped inside.
Oh, very interesting. Yes, I like that.
I read your first two collections. I think we were talking on the last show that the theme of the first one seemed to be ironic reversals.
Yeah.
Classic short stories. When you pick up a collection of scary stories, you want that twist. The second collection, to me, had a theme more of godlike forces and manipulation. People were powerless in the presence of much larger things happening to them. I think if there is a theme that I can devise from this latest collection, it would be slow doom.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, for sure.
All of which brings me to my question. Are you doing okay, Mike?
I am. I think so. Things are great.
So you're not overly concerned with this slow doom, or you're exercising that fear in your stories?
Oh my goodness. You know, I didn't think I was, but you were so insightful in picking up on that theme in the past collection. I recall it was really striking how you picked up on, as you said, this recurring theme of greater forces. And it wasn't a coincidence that I had written the previous collection during the pandemic. Mm-hmm. So I think you were absolutely spot on there. So gosh, I don't know. I think I'm kind of a cliche in this regard. I'm a pretty easygoing individual. It's not hard for me to smile. I'm pretty happy. So, I say I'm a cliche because I couldn't tell you how many times I've encountered horror authors who write these really terrible, on the surface stories, turning out to be very cheerful, easygoing individuals. I think that applies to me as well. So, yeah, I don't think so. for whatever reason, I think that's kind of how the collection came together.
Do you believe that writing horror stories is cathartic, and that's why we horror authors tend to be a somewhat bubbly a lot?
Yeah, I think so. I think that there's merit to that idea.
Okay, spin the wheel. We have 5 stories in the collection. Is there another one you want to tease?
Sure. Maybe elusive. So this one concerns a prisoner on a prison transport bus, and the bus has to take an unexpected detour. Due to a freak storm, he's able to escape, at least temporarily.
What was your inspiration for this one?
I think that this is probably the story that's most unlike the others. I have a strong affinity for gothic flavored fiction. This one, on the other hand, probably like 70s thrillers to an extent. Maybe something like John Carpenter's Assault on Precinct 13.
There's that gritty crime angle.
Yeah.
With the antagonism of nature being so prevalent in this story, do you feel that is God's law coming to bear on this prisoner who, while captive, is actually skating by? He's a much worse offender than even the police and the prison officials know.
Kind of like a karmic justice.
Exactly, that's what I'm going to say. There's a karmic justice coming to pay out here.
I mean, I certainly had that in mind.
Certainly it's great for horror stories where
absolutely,
you want someone to get punished and squeezed in a vice from which there is no escape.
Oh, and going back to your earlier question about horror fiction being cathartic, I mean, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Would you consider that story more of a morality tale, or would you say it has a tinge of eco-horror?
Probably more of a morality tale. As I was putting it together, there's definitely more than one instance of nature aligning in this seeming pursuit of karmic justice. So in that regard, I think it's hard to escape the sense that it's eco horror, but yeah, it's definitely there.
This is your 3rd collection. Why has it taken so long for these long ruminating stories to finally emerge?
Honestly, I have no answer for just how it played out. Well, I guess what I could say is, well, actually, in both instances, I had that basic idea, but I just didn't quite have it figured out how I could put it into a complete narrative.
Your first 2 collections paved the way for these trickier stories?
Absolutely. Yeah, for sure. With Elusive, I can recall being in my early teens and I had an idea of a person getting trapped by drying mud. And I thought that was just a really nifty image, and I toyed with how I might put it into a story, and it stuck with me. But yeah, not until I was at a place where I felt pretty confident in being able to spin a complete narrative off such a basic idea was I able to actually bring that about. And same thing with On the Edge of Oblivion. It's the longest story in the collection, and it concerns a splinter group from a coven of warlocks and witches. They abscond with the leader of the larger group's spellbook, but little do they know that he was wise to their betrayal, and he put a hex on the book. So they find themselves trapped in a small house where the caretaker of a cemetery would live. Because of the booby-trapped spellbook, they're trapped in this house.
And the house has a history.
It does, yes.
This is one of the stories that you've been stewing on.
Yeah, that's one that I've been stewing on for years. It's actually the inspiration for this one. And I'm almost hesitant to share this, considering your earlier question about whether or not my collection is a peek into my psyche. This one was inspired by a reoccurring nightmare that I had when I was a kid. The nightmare was I was in a small house in the middle of a cemetery, and I was on a old wireframe bed with a few other individuals, and we were all terrified because if any of us fell off the bed, we would get pulled by some force under the bed and ripped out of existence. That was the reoccurring nightmare, and I finally turned it into a story.
And the nightmares have stopped, I hope?
A long time ago, yes.
Now that you're going to share them with others.
Yeah.
That's our problem now.
Oh, yeah, exactly.
Can you tell us about the cover of this book?
I had the same artist that did the artwork for my previous collection, Jorge Iricheta, and he did a fantastic job on the previous collection. The image, very gothic. It's a weathered, lopsided tombstone with the title of the collection engraved on the tombstone.
Nice.
Yeah, he's great. He's fantastic.
And when does this collection come out?
It'll be coming out December 5th.
Just in time for Christmas. Do you celebrate Christmas?
I do.
Can I ask you a speed round of some Christmas questions?
Absolutely.
As we're getting into the Christmas season, I'm going to ask you a couple Yuletide questions. Fake tree, yay or boo?
Oh, yay. Definite yay.
Okay. Eggnog, yay or boo?
Ooh, boo. Boo.
Oof. All right. You are 2 for 3. 2 points down. Open presents on Christmas Eve or Christmas morning?
Christmas morning.
Okay.
Although if you had asked me as a kid, it would have been a totally different answer.
What is the best or worst gift you've received?
Oh, gosh. You know what? The best, I got a Virtual Boy, a Nintendo Virtual Boy when I was a kid. That thing was awesome. It's notorious, but I thought it was the coolest thing ever.
That sort of hits both criteria, the best / worst gift.
Yes.
And sometimes it do be like that. I've told a story on the podcast where on Christmas morning I unwrapped the Omega Supreme Transformers playset, and it blew my mind, and I spent hours putting it together. Then I transformed it, and it broke immediately. Like on Christmas Day, it broke. Because there were so many moving parts and they were all so flimsy.
Oh, boy. You know what? I have a similar story.
Okay.
So when I was just a very small boy, my parents got me an electric race car track, and they were up all night putting it together. And when, Christmas morning came and I saw it, I was so excited. It didn't take more than like 10 minutes for me to step on it, but yeah. So I know the feeling.
You stepped on the tiny third rail and
I did.
Electrocuted yourself.
Yes.
Santa or Krampus?
Oh gosh. That one's actually Santa. We'll say Santa.
Safe bet. And then my final question in the Christmas category is, given your knowledge and schooling, what do you think is the best Victorian ghost story?
Ooh. Oh, boy. The one that immediately comes to mind was not written in Victorian times, but I believe it's set during Victorian times, and that would be The Lady in Black.
Okay.
I think that's Nigel Neal. I've
somehow talked myself into an event where I'm reading Victorian ghost stories for Christmas because I was like, hey, let's have an event at this pub. I'm trying to collate a list that I can then abridge into digestible stories. I'm also wondering if I should dress up as a Victorian gentleman or not. Just top hat, scarf, maybe some gloves.
I think the answer is obvious.
The answer is obvious. However, this could so easily have low turnout, and then I'm the guy dressed like a Victorian gentleman, just kind of on his phone, like sitting there, like depressed.
Hey, you may be mistaken for a ghost.
I very well could be, except for the phone, I suppose. Although the blue light under my chin might sell it. So what projects are you working on next?
Gosh, I've got 3 collections under my belt now. I'm strongly leaning towards tackling that novel, finally.
Is there a particular short story that you think has legs, that has grown on you, that you see could become a novel? Or are you going to try the Bradbury method and do a fix-up novel, which you just take a bunch of short stories and you're like, these are kind of linked together?
Ooh, I'd never heard of that before. I may have to entertain that notion. I don't know. If I could just write short stories, I'd be more than happy to do that. But apparently there's not as many fans of short fiction as there are the longer works. So
to me, that's kind of crazy because when I was a young reader, finding a collection or like, a Stephen King short story collection, I was like, oh my God, there's all these different ideas. It's so rich.
yes,
It's not one horse being beaten to death over 300 pages. It's a whole bunch of horses getting beaten to death. Like, it's fantastic. You just kill these horses left and right. I love it. To see people who just want a doorstopper, habitual readers want a book that they can luxuriate in for hundreds of pages after hundreds of pages. I don't know, it's almost like Costco versus some kind of French chef that just gives you one perfect bite. Like, that'll be $100 for that one perfect little bite or something. Yes. But the people who are really driving the economy, they're shopping at Costco. They want to fill their truck. The most voracious readers want the most to read.
Right.
Short story collections just don't satisfy them because one bite and it's gone. I am also a short story writer struggling in a novel writer's world.
Yes. Well, good. I'm happy I'm not the only one.
Yeah. Michael, where can our listeners find you online?
My website, michaeljessalexander.com, is probably the best place, but I am on Instagram and Facebook, same name.
Thank you for coming back on the show, and thanks for chatting with us.
Yeah, thank you.
Please subscribe and follow. Links are in the show notes. You can find me at jeffccarter.com and hit the link to pick up my collection, We Bleed Orange and Black, 31 fun-sized tales for Halloween. Until next time, stay spooktacular.